Afternoon. Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, Township Council meeting, July 9th, 2020. Meeting is called to order by the Township Clerk at 4:10 p.m. The agenda of this special meeting, to the extent known, is as follows. Potential adjustment of the water and sewer rates and personnel matters related to the Finance Department. Formal action may or may not be taken. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on July 6, 2020, where it has remained posted since that date. Copies of this notice was transmitted to the Daily Record on July 6, 2020, and faxed to Star Ledger and various other newspapers and local radio stations on July 6, 2020. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the
Republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to go into the roll call. Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Here.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. DePiro? Mr. DePiro? You may be on mute. Mr. DePiro?
Here.
Also in attendance are Mayor Michael Soriano, Business Administrator Keith Kasmark, Township Attorney Jim Lott, Township Clerk Madden, and CFO Ann Cucci. I have a quorum at this time. Council President, may I begin?
Please.
Okay. We are going to go into reports. First, I want to start with Mayor Michael Soriano.
I have no report, Clerk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Next, I would like to go into Mr. Business Administrator Keith Kasmark.
Thank you, Colette, and I just want to thank the council members for taking the time this afternoon to address two important topics that we have before us with regard to the rate structures for both our sewer and water utility, in addition to this interview tonight with the CFO candidate that I believe will be the recommendation of the administration. But we wanted the council to have the opportunity to meet the individual before we move forward with that formality. The other thing I just wanted to address with the council, and I want to first apologize to those I have not spoken to. Frank Cahill was faster than I was in getting to you folks today. But as I informed Mayor Soriano yesterday, I've been approached about assuming the administrative responsibilities in Woodland Park by two of my council members. Our 15-year administrator clerk is retiring at the end of the month, and the town has gone out and solicited resumes and advertised the position. The council found a suitable candidate for the municipal clerk's position that they have offered the position to. However, they were not comfortable with appointing a clerk/administrator, and therefore asked me to consider assuming those responsibilities. After a lot of thought and twisting and turning, as I told Councilwoman Grignani, I made the determination to accept their offer. But I just want to say to Mayor Soriano and all five members of the council that I appreciate your faith and your confidence in me in almost these last 2 years. It's been a pleasure working with you. We may not always have agreed on every particular issue, but I always felt that there was a level of mutual respect and an effort to try to cooperate on some tough issues between myself and all 6 elected officials here in Parsippany. So I appreciate the opportunity to have served here. It was certainly an opportunity to take on the responsibilities of a larger municipality with a large population and a vast amount of employees. It's certainly been an experience that I value and appreciate the opportunity to have had. Once the formalities in Woodland Park are set, which I expect to happen on July 22nd, then I'll formalize with the mayor a formal resignation date. But I am here for transition. I told the mayor whatever he needs as far as trying to help find a successor, in addition to any support that he needs in transition. And I could even stay on beyond my resignation date to just help facilitate that transition. So that offers to the mayor and also to the members of the council. So that's what I have, Mr. Clerk.
Well, just as a comment from me, sorry to see you go, Keith. I wish you luck on your future endeavors.
I appreciate that, Mike. I really do. And it was a pleasure working with all of you.
Keith,
Yes. Loretta, you're on mute. Go ahead.
There you go.
okay,
There you go.
all right. As I
Loretta, before you start, I just want to remind everyone, please mute if you're not speaking because we're getting a feedback.
Am I on mute now or no?
No, you're not. You're not.
Okay. As I mentioned this afternoon, Keith, Adam and I wish you the very best in your future position.
Thank you, Loretta. Tell Adam we're going to catch a Giants-Bears game together.
Yes.
Anybody else from council?
Keith, I just want to echo the same thing. It's been a pleasure working.
Same for me. Keith. I really enjoyed the time you've spent here, working with us on these many issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you.
Keith, what's your
I'll
last
say the
name?
same. I think that your leadership in cross-aisle conversations has been really, we're going to miss it a lot. I think I will miss that most of all.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, Janice, and Emily. Appreciate that. Mike, I think you asked me what my final date will be, what my last day will be. I don't have that formalized yet because the ordinance that needed to be introduced in Woodland Park for this to happen was introduced last night, which is why I wanted to be forthcoming with you folks today. It will not be adopted until the 22nd, and there'll be an appointment resolution that accompanies the adoption of the ordinance. So once that is complete, then I'll formalize a letter and I'll make sure you folks know what the date structure looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Colette, any more reports, or do we want to move towards the?
Well, I just wanted to see if the township attorney had anything to say. Because he had a report.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we have no reports, we are going to be moving right along under the ordinances for discussion. At this time, there is a consultant named Robert who will be also joining this discussion. So with that being said, I would like to open the floor up to the panelists, the council, and to Rob.
Ryan, is Rob in the meeting?
I'm in the meeting. Hi, everyone.
Rob, Steve Kazmark. I just want to introduce Rob. Rob has been our point of contact with the Wilcox firm, who we engaged, and Kuki and I did a number of months ago in order to facilitate the creation of a report when it comes to utility finances and our rate structure moving forward. As I pointed out in my July 1st memo to the council, we have not raised rates with regard to sewer and water since 2007 and 2006, respectively. And at this point, Rob will walk you through the analysis that he and his colleagues have done for the township to talk a little bit about what we need the rate structure to look like moving forward in order to make sure that we don't put the utilities in jeopardy when it comes to the amount of surplus and operating expenses that we need to conduct business with sewer and water. So Rob, I'll turn it over to you. And I would just ask everybody who is not speaking to put themselves on mute because we are receiving some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. So we were approached by the township with the issue that both the water and sewer fund were significantly losing funds and depleting year by year. And they, of course, they asked us to come in, take a look at these funds, take a look at the existing rate structure. What we found is that the cause of this rapid depletion on both sides it was twofold. We saw that the operating costs year to year were increasing anywhere between 6 to 8% over the past 5 years. However, the water rates had remained fairly static. Additionally, we were transferring funds annually from both the water and sewer funds to help fund the current fund budget. The result, how we see it, is we are on path to have both funds nearly or completely depleted by either sometime next year or the year after, the following year. What we did is we prepared 2 rate study reports, and we're proposing an initial 39% increase in 2020 to both the water and sewer rates, followed by annual increases ranging from 5 to 8% in the 4-year period that follows. These rate increases are what we're projecting. They will be able to fund our escalating cost of operations, our debt service obligations, as well as capital projects, and in the short term, transfers to the township until the current fund can be balanced on its own. The proposed rate increase would affect the average residential water and sewer customer. On the water side, it would be about a $15.73 increase per quarter. On the sewer side, it'd be about a $33.22 increase per quarter. I will point out again, the water rates haven't been increased since 2007. The sewer rates were last updated in 2006. This increase that we're talking about for the initial one is about the equivalent of if we were to had raised rates about 2 to 2.5% every year, from 2006 to 2007. This is about the equivalent of that. But unfortunately, we're in the position right now where we're playing we're playing catch up. Now what we did is we also compared this proposed 2020 rates to other local municipalities in the area. Now on the water side, we're still very low compared to our neighboring towns. Out of the selection that I picked, I think we were still the 3rd lowest. On the sewer side, we fell pretty much in the lower half of the sample that I picked, and this is so what we're proposing is is still on the low side compared to our neighboring towns. That's the synopsis of the reports that we presented to the township. Are there any questions from the board that I can help answer as far as the reports or the recommendations?
Yeah, I have a question. Rob?
Yes.
This is Councilman Chris. The numbers you gave us at the beginning, when you took about a 39% increase right off the bat and then 6 to 8% over the next 5 years. So that would mean theoretically it could be potentially a 79% increase over the next 5 years. Total.
So we're doing, so what we're, I guess, when you're talking about the overall at the end of the 5-year period.
Yes.
I believe so. I haven't run those. I haven't run that overall figure, but certainly, we certainly would need to get there to catch up.
Yeah, you would say 39% right away and then 6 to 8% for 5 years. So
Yes.
if it was the top 8% times 5 would be 40%. So that would be a total of 79% increase in 5 years.
And again, certainly I can run those figures. That's and we'll do so now.
This is Councilmember Peterson. Do you have a dollar value that translates to the average household over the course of the year?
I do. Well, no, I'm sorry. By quarter, yes.
Rob,
Yes.
can I ask you, could I just ask that you turn down the volume, just we're getting some feedback. Maybe just turn it down just a tad bit.
Is this, I'm sorry, Keith, were you talking?
That's right. Yeah, that's good. That's better. Just because I guess we're getting feedback, and I think it's coming from your mic. So if we can just ask you to turn it down just a tad bit.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
No problem. Is that a bit better, everyone?
That's much better.
Okay. All right. So for the average user, you'd be looking at a total bill on the water side of $168. On the sewer side, you'd be looking at $473 per year. So the annual increase is going to be for this initial 2020 year. Well, annualized, it's $195 increase, but we're only initially talking for it would affect the first half of the year. So really, for this year, it'd be $98 for the average household. For both water and sewer.
Councilwoman Grignani,
Yes.
in your proposal that we received on discussion points,
Yes.
you have an average quarterly bill of $40.33.
Correct. For currently for water, yes.
Okay, and you're asking for a residential quarterly average change of $15.73, which comes to a total of $56.06.
Correct.
Times 4 comes to $224.24.
Let's see. So the 1573 and the 3322 is 195.
I'm not talking about the $33. I'm talking about the water bill specifically. You're telling me the average of $40.33 plus the $15.73 comes out to $56.06. Times 4 for the year is $224.24.
That's correct, yes.
All right. Plus the $473 for sewer comes out to $697.84 for a resident for the year. Am I getting those numbers correctly, sir?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I want to make mention of the ordinance. The ordinance for the sewer has a single family and multi-family residential dwelling is $71 per quarter. So what are we talking about? $71 or $33.22?
Yeah, so what we're discussing, the difference, what the figures that you're looking in the presentation is based on the average bill for the average water user. So that would include not only residential, but also it averages in apartments. This would be the average household.
Okay, but what is the figure? Is the figure $33.22 or $71? That is in our that's in our ordinance.
And I apologize. I'm just scrolling down on the ordinance here.
Okay.
Or maybe,
it's on page 2. It's on page 2.
Yeah.
And it's got section 1, the third.
Okay. Now, would this be something maybe we could bring up on the screen? I apologize.
Let me read that to you, please.
Sure.
It's section 1, chapter 329.
We're gonna bring it up on the screen right now.
Fine.
As we're reading it, so I just want to, we'll bring it up, and then once it's up, we'll go ahead and, give us just one moment while we transition here. Okay, here it is. There it is. So, at this point, if you can just point out to where, what portion, so we can bring it up for Rob to look at.
It's in our ordinance for the sewer, and it's section 1.
Oh, yes.
Here we go.
Section 1, paragraph 3. Single family and multifamily residential dwelling, $71 per quarter. You just mentioned $33.22. So which one is it?
Well, the $33.22 is the change in the average billing. So the average billing for sewer, even though we're proposing having the rate increase to $71 per single user, for a single family user, the average user under this would be paying about $118 per quarter. And some of that has to do with, different amounts of usage on this. Again, we're basing that on average. That $33.22 is actually just the change in the average between the previous average on the quarterly bill versus the proposed average.
Well, I still don't know. I'm still not following you. Okay, but then the other thing I want to mention is if we go over our usage on water and sewer, there are going to be additional charges. How much are we actually charging our residents? They could be paying a substantial amount more than what they're paying now. I understand the rates have to be raised, but this is ludicrous, the amount of money that is being asked for right now. Okay? Why wasn't, if we knew this was happening, why didn't the administration increase our sewer over a period of these past 3 years? Plus, this survey was done, or this study was done in March. Why are we just getting it now in July?
Councilwoman, if I may, through the council president, and I'm getting a little feedback, so I hope you can hear me. First of all, I'll just call the council's attention to the fact that last year, the administration did recommend a 2% increase in both water and sewer. Understanding the structure of last year, and speaking candidly, with the fact that, there was a municipal election to be held in November, we met with a 2% recommendation that was not pursued. I can't speak to what happened prior to my arrival here in October of 2018, but the issue with regard to the rates is a seriously pressing issue. And every month that goes by, we run the risk of shortchanging, having a shortfall in both water and sewer in 2021. There was a memo that was issued to the council last year that projected the shortfall arriving somewhere in 2023 or 2024. And this report, which is much more comprehensive than the memo that was written last year, projects that to be even sooner. With regard to the timing of the report being provided to council, that was my decision. One, we were in the midst of the COVID-19 public health crisis, which became the priority above everything else that was happening in the township. And secondly, I quite frankly did not want to make this report public until the budget was approved because I was concerned about the public receiving both the budget information and the water and sewer rate information simultaneously. And that's, this is a public meeting, so I have no problem saying that that was my decision as far as when to present this information to both the governing body and also to the public at large.
Councilwoman, Councilmember Janice McCarthy, I don't think this should come as a surprise to anyone because we've been talking about this for the past 3 years. And, I remember we had a meeting with Ms. Avancia early, I think in my first year on council, and he pointed out this issue when we discussed the sewer rates. So, I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone.
If I may add, Rob, I gave you those numbers at the beginning that it potentially could be a 79% increase over 5 years.
Yes.
I just did some quick math. And if you compound those percentages over 5 years, the increase comes to over 104% over 5 years. I think that's absurd to increase water and sewer over 104% over a 5-year period. That's, to me, that's crazy.
Can I speak? That's not what's happening. What's happening is we're paying what we should have been paying all along. So it's a bitter pill to swallow now, but it's not as though like a rational budget keeper in a household who had some foresight may have thought, this bubble's going to burst. I should put aside some cash for when these rates go up. Now, most people don't do that, myself included, because we're not that fiscally responsible or whatever the reason is. We're trying to live our lives. It doesn't make it less of a reality that without intense action, the fund will be empty. And so we can look at it on a micro level of how this impacts everybody from the dollars and cents over a period of time. But the macro vision here is we're going to be out of money. And maybe it's worth outlining a little bit of what does it look like when there's no money.
Well, and again, Councilmember McCarthy, I think it was early this year that, I pointed out in a discussion that fiscal policies, sound fiscal policies generate sufficient revenue through taxes and fees and grants. And Parsippany, on the other hand, was operating with a deficit. And instead of raising sufficient revenue to cover expenses and taxes, it relied too heavily on utility surplus and consistently increasing the amount of the surplus without raising the fees. Matter of fact, I think in 2010, sewer fees were lower. That's just not sustainable.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Janice. I need somebody to be muted. Everybody, please be muted because when she's speaking, we're getting feedback. I apologize to cut you off, Janice. Please, everybody, mute your microphones when you're not speaking so we don't get the feedback.
Well, okay, so just to repeat, I said that when you generate sufficient revenues, you generate them through taxes, grants, and fees, and that didn't happen. And that didn't happen for like 6 or 7 years. So we were operating using the sewer surplus and transferring increasing amount of funds to the current fund. And that's what we did. So as Emily pointed out, that's not sustainable. And it comes to fruition now. It's like debt, your credit card debt. When you borrow and borrow and borrow, at some point you have to pay that back. And unfortunately, now we have to pay it back. So we have to make some hard decisions. I guess that if we're not willing to do that, then the fund will be depleted.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, if I can just give a little history here. Prior to upgrading the sewer treatment plant, the rates we had were based on a electric bill that was 75% greater than it is now. So the rates that we were charging were covering a huge expense in electricity. When we upgraded the sewer treatment plant and significantly reduced our electric bill, what we were charging in the sewer rate was higher than we needed to operate the sewer plant. We decided to give that back to the residents by shifting some of it over to current fund, never to exceed the project fund balance. And that was the rule that we used for many years, not to exceed the fund balance so we could recoup whatever we transferred in the following year. We had a surplus. That would benefit the Parsippany taxpayers. If we simply reduced the rate at that point in time, because our rate was higher than the cost at that time, then we would also be reducing the rate for all the commercial properties and all the townships that we have, that use our sewer treatment plant. Rather than give it to the commercial properties and the other towns, by transferring some of that into our current fund, we directly benefited the Parsippany taxpayers and not the others. That worked fine for a few years, okay? But we should never exceed the fund balance in any utility. And that's the rule that we broke that got us into trouble, I believe.
I'd like to talk here for a second. The other thing that happened was that the usage had started to drop off as well. Okay, so that is like a double whammy. Not only weren't the rates high enough, but the usage started dropping down for efficiencies and things like that. And for the sewer plant and the water, we ended up taking on more ordinance and capital and debt because of the failing water system. I mean, that's just on the water side. So it's like the perfect storm coming together. And the problem is that we need to do something quickly because your fund balance right now has dropped significantly, and we don't want to have a problem in 21 and going forward, just like Emily was talking about. It's not that in the past that I believe that we weren't spending the money as we needed to be on the capital projects. And with the new regime that had come in with Joe Beckmeyer and Waworka, they started really doing a lot of new things, and COA hasn't helped it either. We have to do, as you know, how many ordinances did we pass last year to fix the wells? Okay, so it's a whole combination of things, and this has to happen. You know, it sounds big, it sounds bad, but I have to tell you, we're still on the very bottom of the list in the county in terms of our rates. Not that we want to raise them that high, and it sounds terrible, but it's still a really good deal. Okay, and I encourage you to do this. And I know it sounds bad, but you have to do this for your residents, for the residents.
Through your council president, if I may, to Councilman Karifi's point, and I understand that this may seem drastic all at once, but as I started off the presentation this afternoon, rates have not been adjusted since 2006. And to the council president's point, when it came to sewer, they were actually last adjusted downward, not upward. And if you would have, and listen, we can't turn back the hands of time. I appreciate that. However, if similar to the municipal budget, you kept on a 2% trajectory over those 14 years where the rates remain static, you would have been adjusting the rates by approximately 2.7% per year. Had that been done over the last 14 years, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And unfortunately, by not making those adjustments, and I'm not trying to be critical of anybody here, I don't know how much this was even talked about over that, decade and a half, so to speak. But had that been done and kept on pace, you would not have to make this critical decision that's before you tonight with the report from the Wilcox firm. So I just want to point out that, this is a compounding issue. The municipal budget, separate and apart from the utilities, it's good fiscal practice in New Jersey to stick to that 2% cap, that limitation, so that your cap doesn't get restricted if you lower the increase by less than 2%, because that's the effect that the law has. The same can be applied to the sewer and water rates. Your contractual obligations to your employees, which are paid exclusively through these utility funds, exceed the 2% cap. They exceed the 2% cap for blue collar based on the guide that the council approved in order to, and the administration negotiated in order to compensate the rank and file blue collar employees. And we settled at slightly over 2% for the supervisors across the board, including those at sewer and water. So just in your employee costs are going up more than 2%, yet the rates have stayed stagnant, for nearly 15 years. So I just want to point that out
Can I make a suggestion if it's possible? I mean, I get all of that. Is it possible, especially this year in particular with the virus and the pandemic and everything going on, is it possible to reach the end goal, but instead of such a major increase right off the bat, maybe spreading it out over 7 or 8 years, but still reaching the goal over that time, but not just such a dramatic hit right off the bat?
Rob, what's your analysis of that?
Unfortunately, no. And this is something you notice that we did the 39% increase, and then we still have somewhat larger increases for the following years. 5%, ranging between 5 to 8%. We tried a number of scenarios here. The issue is that I think if we had this conversation last year, that would have been a real possibility of spreading out this hit a bit more. How we saw it is that 2021 we're in a very critical area, which really is it's 6 months away. So that's unfortunately the answer is I don't believe so. No, we did not. We thought 39% was pretty much the lowest that we could do to meet these obligations going for next year.
I was going to ask the same kind of question, but a different way from Paul. If you have a pie, there are different ways you can cut the pie to reach 100% of the pie eventually. So my question would have been, instead of a 39% increase now, a 20% increase with a 6 or 7 or 8% the following year, cut the pie up differently so it's not a big amount to choke everybody this first year.
I would make the case that the pie hasn't been cut for 14 years. That's the benefit. No one had to take any cuts for 14 years. I'm not saying that this isn't an intense thing, but let's not, I just want to stress we cannot isolate this in time. No one took an increase for 14 years.
Yeah, and I think in any other situation, you would have other mechanisms. Another mechanism would be maybe borrowing from the current fund. But I think my understanding is that a lot of these options have been exhausted. Right now our current fund is borrowing from these or being funded through these utilities. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if we have that option.
Kenny?
We do not have that option.
Okay. If we have no one else from the council administration that wants to comment, then I'm going to go ahead and go and move on to the public portion of the meeting.
Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Look, I'm sorry. Janice, do you want to speak first and then I'll speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ann if she could tell us what the fund bill balance is now. Is there anything left?
Well, here's the thing. What happened because the increase in costs in the water and the sewer operating, to just fund the water and the sewer operating budgets, forget about the current fund, we needed to use much, much more of their individual fund balance. For example, this year in the water, we needed to use 2.3 million of our own savings to be able to just stay alive in the water, okay, to be balanced in the water fund. And the sewer fund, which we used to just use $1 million or $1.5 million, this year, just to get through, we had to use 3.366 million. So you can see what's happening. Forget about the current fund. In the sewer fund itself and the water, the rates that you have right now are not enough to fund and take care of the operating of just the utility. And on top of that now, if you're going to fund the current, you're pretty much have exhausted almost all the fund balance. And I'm not sure if you don't do this, and especially because we're 6 months through already. We're 6 months through the year. This calculation that Rob did and we worked on was calculated based on a full year, if I'm not mistaken. So I get it with that. It sounds like a lot and it feels like a lot. We're at critical mass, like Emily spoke about.
And I'm sorry, and just one correction there.
Rob, before we continue, I'm sorry. I need everybody who is not speaking to mute themselves. Jim, also, I need you to be on mute, and I think everybody else is on mute as well. But if you can please mute yourselves when you're not speaking, because then we get feedback. Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And Ange, I'm sorry, just a quick correction. This study was calculated on the assumption where that the 2020 rates this is based on a 6-month assumption. So it's something that if we do, if the township decides to adopt these new rates, the projection was done considering that it would be done just for these 6 months for the year. So it's not a full year. It is just a half year for that first 2020 year.
I realize that. However, I just don't know when we talked about the calculation, how much of that's going to regenerate fund balance, Rob. That's all I was trying to say. You know?
No, very true. Very true.
You know, and I think another issue, Ann, if I'm not mistaken, is, you know, we increased or we had more debt because we couldn't use those surpluses in the sewer fund. So, you know, it's sort of like there's you know, more expense there too for the taxpayer to pay off the debt, right?
Using the credit card instead of cash, right, Janice?
Right.
Well, I think also that our new Joe Beckmeyer has been doing a lot of good projects up there that needed to be done for many, many years up at the sewer plant. There were a lot of great ideas and none of those were happening. And then when Joe got there, they started really doing these improvements and things that needed to be done on a maintenance level. And on the water side, you have the other problem that the wells are dried up and we're regenerating those and trying to get ready for COA. So all of this, it makes a difference. And yeah, we can't fund it through fund balance. We have to fund it through debt. And ideally over time, we would like to pay for some of these things through operating, but right now that's not happening. So yes, we have incurred more debt and we will for the next few years.
Anyone else?
Yes. Now, again, like I had alluded to in the way Councilmember McCarthy was saying that we've basically been using the credit card instead of paying cash on this, as it were, and keep it in very simple household terms, and paying it off and paying interest on capital projects that we've had to do instead of just paying it straight out with cash is costing us money in the long run. And that's something that has concerned me from the beginning. But just on another thing, I get Councilman Karifi's hesitancy because this is a tough pill to swallow. And I see that. I feel it too, but just understand, at least the way I see it. I mean, it's easy to do the popular thing, the thing that'll, make everyone go hip, hip, hooray. But it's harder in this case to do the right thing. This is going to be hard for us as leaders, as elected officials here. This is going to be rough to do. And I understand that, but just because it's the hard thing to do does not mean it's not the right thing to do. So keep asking your questions. Let's go back and look at this. Okay, we have some tough decisions to make, and I am sensitive to the fact that all 5 of us, and me included being 6, have a very tough decision to make on this. And
What is
but
there
I'm
to go back
imploring
and be
you,
looked at?
we need to do the right thing. No, meaning like the before you vote.
Okay, anybody else for discussion? Okay, seeing that there's no one else for discussion, we are now going to move to the public portion of this meeting. So before we start the public portion, just want to alert the public that in the bottom, you will have a raise hand icon. You raise your hand. Once I see you, you will be unmuted. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Please be advised, before you begin speaking, you need to give your name and address. If you do not give your name and address, you will be cut off. With that being said, I now would like to entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Make a motion.
Motion. Second, Peterson.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes,
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
yes,
Okay, at this time, I'm opening the floor up to the public. Please, once you raise your hand and we see that your hand is raised, you will be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak. Okay. At this point, I have a Mr. Richard, I believe Young it is. We will go ahead and unmute you. Mr. Richard Young, you're unmuted now. You can go ahead and speak. Please identify your name and address.
My name is Richard Young. I live at 179 Intervale Road in Parsippany. I'd like to thank you all for your service and recognize the difficulty of what is before you. As the mayor was saying a little bit ago, it is hard to do the right thing. And I think the situation that you see before you is the result of people not doing the right thing for a very long period of time. Clearly, one of the ways that we as citizens were reassured that the township budget was kept in balance now appears to be that funds were siphoned off from the water and sewer utility. So perhaps the focus of this needs to be turned back around to the township and to where elsewhere in the township budget that funds can be transferred back to the water and sewer utilities, not siphoned out of the pockets of the taxpayers, especially at the rate that's being suggested here. A 39% increase over 1 year in a meeting that's held at 4 o'clock on a business day is a little unconscionable. I think the timing of this doesn't really complement the high level of accomplishment and of attitude that we would expect from our town council. Not really very good to put us out this way. I think, as Mr. Carriffy was kind to say, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the economic impact on many of us has been beyond meaningful. Having something as ridiculous as a 39% increase because somebody didn't recognize this problem and work it through the years is unconscionable. I believe you should consider those points as you look at it. I think also you should work a bit more closely or have the appropriate supervisors within the water and sewer department look a bit more closely at things that really are crises and require capital investment at this time, as opposed to things that can be stretched out in time or renegotiated. I'd appreciate your care as you look forward at this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Young. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak during the public portion? I haven't seen any raised hands yet. I will wait just a few seconds to see if anyone would like to speak.
Can I just say, in response to Mr. Young's question, I'm not sure that this is a result of not recognizing that this was a problem. For as long as I've been serving here, I have heard this is going to be a problem, this is going to be a problem, this is going to be a problem, and now here we are with the problem. I can't account for the decade plus prior to my arrival, but I don't think that it was naivety that led us to this point.
Okay, do we have any other member from the public? I don't see any member raising their hand. So At this time, seeing no one else from the public, I would like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion.
Second,
Second, Peterson.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Carriffy, seconded from Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
The floor is closed. So at this time, we are now going to move into the executive session where we're going to be discussing personnel matters related to the finance department. I want to let the public know that there is going to be no action to be taken. We will not be seen or heard at the time we go into executive session. However, we will come back out into the public to adjourn, but I do want to let the public know that no action will be taken after the executive session. Thank you for your attendance and your comments. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution for the executive.
Colette?
Yes.
Excuse me, I just want to say thank you to everyone. I'm going to step off, and I feel the same way Keith does. So thank you all for everything. And it's been a real pleasure to work with everyone. And I am also going to be here for any transition. I encourage you to be open to the person who you're going to speak to. He's a very good friend of mine as well. And I look forward to, if it's acceptable, of course, to you, I look forward to working with him, similar to what Keith's going to do, is for as long as it takes. So I'm going to drop off, and have a good night, everybody.
Bye, Ann.
All right. Thank you, Ann.
I am.
This is Rob McNinch. Take care, everyone. I'm going to drop off as well.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and read
Thank you, Rob.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read the executive session resolution now. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 31 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the Township Council wishes to discuss personnel matters related to the Finance Department, and whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes will be made public. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township Parsippany-Troy Hills that the public be excluded from this meeting. I need a motion to adjourn into public session, into closed session.
Motion, Peterson.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
and Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Okay, we're now going to go ahead and go into executive session. You guys stay signed down. We're going to put you into executive session.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I apologize. We're now back in open session. We now need a motion to reconvene into open session, please.
Make a motion.
Second, Loretta.
Second, Peterson.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero. Mr. DePiero. Mr. DePiero? Okay, seems like we might have technical difficulties with Mr. DePiero, but we have 4 votes to go into open session. Okay, being that we're in open session, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero. Okay, Mr. DePiero, it seems like we're having technical difficulties, but we do have the 4 votes. We have a quorum to have adjourned. So I'm going to wish everyone a good night, and we will touch base later on.
Good night, everyone.
Colette, Colette,
Yes.
Cheers, Michael.
can I call you, or you call me? I have a question.
Yeah, I'll call you right now.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.